Hello dear students, welcome to Bajirao Ias Academy interview guidance program. I am Surya. So in today's discussion we are talking about the demographic dividend. Now for India, demographic dividend is a very important. It plays a very crucial role in meet all the necessary and desired aspirations that India have. For example, India wanted to become a $5 trillion economy, and India also wanted to become a top 3 economy by the year 2030. So on all these respects, demographic dividend will play a very crucial role. And apart from achieving the desired goals of economic growth and economic development, the demographic dividend will place India in the list of developed countries in the next 2 decades. Now, why India's demographic dividend is in news in recent times? So, in last few lecture, we have talked about the interim budget 2024 and 25. So this budget was introduced recently, and this budget had talked about the demographic dividend. So in this interim budget, a high-powered committee was constituted to study on India's population growth, especially about the demographic dividend, because as we already know that India has become the world's largest populous country, overtaking China. Now if you look at India's overall population, it is around 142.86 crore, okay, surpassed China. Now in this context, you have to understand what is demographic dividend. So before discussing any of this on India's demographic dividend, we need to understand the definition and the meaning of demographic dividend. Now demographic dividend will be helpful, or it is important for your mains examination as well as your interview as well. Now here demographic dividend has been defined by the United Nations Population Fund. So United Nations Population Fund, UN Population Fund, has defined the demographic dividend. Now according to this definition, economic growth potential of a country, so that can result in shift from the population transition or population's age structure, mainly when the share of working age population is larger than the dependent population. So what is the dependent population? The population who are old age, who are in older age, and the population who are at their young age, I mean childhood. So therefore the share of working age population is very high in India, and according to United Nations Population Fund, so 68% of the population in India are in the working age category. So working age category usually involves 15 years to 64 years. So population in this age group is considered as the working age population, and because of 68% of the total population in the working age, so we consider this population as India's demographic dividend. So this is what the definition of demographic dividend, that is economic growth potential of a country that can result from the shifts in the population age structure. Okay, so mainly when the share of working age population is higher than the share of population who are dependent. Okay, so after that, we need to talk about the status of India's demographic dividend as of now. Now, as I have already told you that India's population now is around 142 crore, surpassed China as the world's largest populous country in the mid of 2023 itself. So in the year 2022, India's population stands at 1.417 billion. Okay, so India has surpassed China with a population of 1.412 billion. This is China's population, and now India is the world's most populous country in the world. However, according to the latest projections by the United Nations with respect to the population and demographic dividend of India, India's population expected to reach 1.46 billion by the year 2030. Okay, so India's population continues to grow up to the year 2030, and India's population will become around 1.46 billion, that is close to 1.5 billion people. Now please understand, global population is 8 billion. Global population is 8 billion. By the year 2030, India comprises 17% of the global population. Okay, so this is a huge in terms of composition of population. Now, India's population growth and the fertility have declined since the years 1970s. So since 1970s up till 1970s, India has experienced the growth rate in the population and even the fertility rate. So however, over a period of time, we can see the declining population growth rate and even the fertility rate. Now, if you look at the fertility rate, it has come down to around 2. Okay, so even in urban areas it has become 1.8. so this has been indicating there has been a decline in the population growth rate as well as the fertility rate as well. Now, there are several reasons which contribute for the declining population growth and the fertility rate as well. For example, women education is a one factor, and access to contraceptives, improving education, healthcare facilities. So all these factors have been contributing to reducing the population growth rate or declining the total fertility rate. Now here, what is the fertility rate? We need to understand the meaning of fertility rate. Now, fertility rate means a woman in her life, how many number of kids she'll give birth to, in her life, is what is considered as total fertility rate. So this total fertility rate and the population growth rate is usually considered as instrumental in shaping India's demographic trajectory and India's demographic transition. Now, if you look at India's total fertility rate predictions by the year 2035, it will reach to 1.73. Okay, so a woman in her life would give birth to 1.73 children. Okay, so this is the total fertility rate in India by the year 2035. So it is generally lower than the total replacement level fertility rates. Now, if you look at the fertility rates in India, as I have already told you, it is now 2.0. so that has been held by National Family Health Survey. According to National Family Health Survey 5, total fertility rate in India is 2.0, and in urban areas it is around 1.8. Okay, so this is below the replacement levels of fertility rate. Now, in this context, what is the replacement levels of the fertility rate? So two parents giving birth to 1.8 kids, so that is the lower than the replacement level. Okay, so 2 kids would replace 2 parents if it is 2.0. However, if it is 1.8, then just 1.8 kids have been replacing the 2 parents. So this is lesser than the total replacement level, and this has been leading to the demographic transition with more working age population or people and fewer children. Okay, so this also indicates a major demographic trajectory in India. Now, what is this population growth committee is all about? That was constituted in the recent interim budget of 24-25. Interim budget of 24-25. What is this population growth committee? Now, firstly, we need to understand the mandate of this population growth committee. So this population growth committee study India's population growth to ensure that nation is on the target to meet the Vikasit Bharat goal by 2047. So we have the Vikasit Bharat goal by 2047. Now here, why 2047 is significant? Because by the year 2047, India will celebrate 100th year of its Independence Day anniversary. So because of this reason, 2047 is significance. So what is Vikasit Bharat by 2047? So India wanted to become a developed nation, a developed country by the year 2047, where the standards of living of the people are high and India eliminate poverty, hunger, malnutrition, and a decent standard of living for everyone, and India also achieves the gender equality, gender parity and everything by the year 2047. So in this context, what is the role of population growth committee? So the role is examine the challenges which have been arising from the past population growth and the demographic challenges that we are going to face in the future as well as the present. So if you look at the data of United Nations, by 2030 India would have around 1.42 billion population, that is close to 1.5 billion population. So therefore, in the context of increasing the population, this population growth committee would study the challenges which have been arising out of the fast population growth, and it will also study the demographic changes that have been taking place. So it will address several other issues. So issues such as family planning. Now family planning usually plays a very important role in reducing the population, a population control. So for this, awareness among the people is a very important aspect. Apart from awareness, access to safe contraceptive and increasing the healthcare facilities among the people is very important. So therefore it will specifically focuses on issues such as family planning, especially in rural areas, in cooperation with the asha workers, anganwadis, as well as ANMs in the rural areas. Okay, so apart from that, it would also look into the maternal and child health. So when we say maternal and child health, we need to look into the nutrition of child, vaccination on time, so that would particularly reduces the infant mortality rate and maternal mortality rate. Okay, so this also constitutes as part of sustainable development goal number 3, healthcare for all. So apart from that, it would also focus on education of people and skilling of the people and employment generation and socio-economic development. So it would look into all these issues, and it would frame a way forward for the challenges that we have been facing currently. So apart from that, it would also adopt the interdisciplinary approach. Okay, so therefore the committee will draw expertise from the multiple disciplines, for example, such as demography, public health, economics, sociology, and governance. So therefore an interdisciplinary approach would be adopted whenever it studies the demographic transition as well as demographic dividend. Now in this context, as I have already told you that India has a goal to become a Viksit Bharat by the year 2047. So we talked about this Viksit Bharat goal by 2047. Now if you remember, we are now in the Kartavya Kal. Okay, we are now in the Kartavya Kal. So this Amrit Kal has transformed or given way to this Kartavya Kal. So this 25 years from India's 75th year of independence to 100th year of independence, so this 25 years is called as Kartavya Kal. So earlier this time period was known as Amrit Kal. Amrit Kal. However, the recent budget has changed it and made it the Kartavya Kal. So in this budget itself, India wanted to become a developed nation by the year 2047, and this is rightly called as Viksit Bharat by 2047. So therefore it represents the government's vision to transform the country into a developed entity by 100th independence in 2047, because in 2047 we would celebrate the 100th anniversary of our independence. Now in this context, what the population committee should consider. Okay, so while studying various challenges, what population committee should consider? Firstly, it would modernize the existing data infrastructure to make the data more and more reliable. Now we do not have adequate amount of data with respect to population. So when we have reliable data, so that will help us in making data driven policy making, or even evidence based policy making. So that is more impactful whenever we are implementing or announcing any new policies that targeted the existing demographic dividend. So therefore this particular population committee is tasked with modernizing existing data infrastructure, so to build robust systems for data collection, management, analysis, and it will upgrade the data collection methods to ensure data security as well as data privacy. Okay, so this is the first consideration of this population committee. After that, this population committee would also take into account different stakeholders. Okay, so this is also called as the multi-stakeholder approach, because it collaborates with various other stakeholders who are involved into this. For example, the government agencies, non-governmental organizations, civil society groups. So therefore it will collaborate with all these agencies, and it helps in fostering partnerships, collaboration, and enable a collective action to carry out population related policies and programs at the national as well as the grassroots level. So grassroots level, panchayat, municipal levels, and even at the national levels. Okay, so this is the second most important consideration of this population growth committee. So after that, it would also take up initiatives such as awareness generation among the people. Now, awareness generation is also a very important part of demographic dividend. Okay, so better utilization of the demographic dividend. So therefore this committee would empower the individuals and communities, and with accurate information and resources, and this would promote the responsible family planning practices and improve healthcare outcomes. Now this family planning practices would help control population growth in India. So thereby, when we control the population, when population growth gradually reduces, we can use the existing resources in a better possible manner. We can use these resources in a better possible manner, and it will also help in improving the healthcare outcomes and the existing infrastructure, whether it is healthcare infrastructure, education infrastructure, can be better utilized for the betterment of the people. So after that, this committee is also considers the international cooperation with relevant agencies, relevant organizations to better utilize the existing demographic dividend and also control the population growth. Please remember, by the year 2035, India would have around 17% of the global population. Okay, so therefore in this respect, it is very important that India would cooperate with these international multilateral organizations, for example, World Health Organization, World Bank, United Nations Population Fund, etc. Okay, so the population committee should also facilitate international cooperation and collaboration with the UN Population Division, World Bank, World Health Organization for the exchange of best practices in population management as well. Now, in this context, we need to understand what India has to do to leverage its existing demographic dividend. Please remember, I have already told you 68% of India's population is in the working age. So working age, I mean 14 years to 64 years. Okay, so this is the working age population, and 28% of the India's population is in the working age, and India's median age is around 28.5%. So therefore there is a need to correctly use the existing demographic dividend. Now in this context, we have to understand what is a human capital. Human capital is fundamental of the demographic dividend. Now what is human capital? Human capital is intangible collective resources possessed by individuals and groups within the given population category. Okay, so this is intangible collective resource, and that is possessed by individuals and groups within a given population group. So after that, we need to talk about the ways through which we can better utilize our existing demographic dividend. So how can we use the existing demographic dividend in a better possible manner? First, we need to invest in our existing human capital. So investment in human capital is very crucial. For example, investment in education, investment in healthcare, and investment in skill development, vocational training. So all of them are very important to better utilize our existing demographic dividend. So this will maximize the benefits of a favorable age distribution. Please remember, I have already said that India's total population, out of total population, 68% of India's population are in the working age category. So therefore it benefits the favorable age distribution, and India must invest in greater development of its existing human capital. Now, if you look at India's total investment in education, it is less than 3%. Yeah, coming. Okay, okay. हाँ sure. हाँ हाँ, I'll come, I'll come. Sorry. In this context, India will spend around 3% of its GDP on education and around just 1.5% of its GDP on the healthcare sector. So therefore, in this context, National Family Health Survey and National Health Policy has recommended that India should spend around India should spend around 3% of its GDP on the healthcare sector itself. So after that, India increases fund in healthcare sector in recent times. So therefore it helps in undertaking the concerted efforts to ensure access to essential commodities, nutrition programs. They are particularly targeting at the vulnerable sections, and interventions to improve the availability and the sanitation as well. So after that, we need to talk about the employment generation as well. Okay, so when we talk about the employment generation, it is essential to absorb India's large and young workforce, and this would reduce the poverty and inequality. Now, 21% of India's population are under the below poverty line. So apart from below poverty line, around 11% of India's population have been facing multidimensional poverty. So in this context, it is very important that we need to address this multinational poverty. So multinational poverty essentially means poverty is not just about the income. Okay, so it is all about the access to electricity, education, healthcare, housing, okay, and clothing. Now in this context, we need to talk about the workforce as well. Now if you look at the India's workforce structure, around 85% of India's workforce, around 85% of India's workforce is in the informal category. So therefore there have been there have been a need to convert or make a transition towards the formal economy. Okay, so India needs to integrate the informal sector, which usually accounts for 90% of India's employment, with the formal sector. So this would improve the productivity, wages of the people, social protection for the millions of workforce. After that, we need to talk about the gender equality as well. Now, gender equality is a most important indicator of the development. Now, the female labor force participation is lower compared to countries like Bangladesh and even Sri Lanka. So therefore, India focused on improving its labor force participation, and it should be empowered as they face issues such as social norms, discrimination, lack of education, and lack of skills. So therefore, gender equality is an essential aspect that would lead to the empowerment of women. So recently, the parliament has provided 33% of the reservation for women in the Lok Sabha as well as state legislative assemblies. After that, we need to talk about addressing the existing gender disparity as well. Now, how can we address these gender disparities? By providing access to education, healthcare, and promote family planning practices. And they are very crucial in ensuring inclusive and sustainable development that has a space for the woman empowerment or inclusive development of women. Okay, so these are the measures that we need to take to leverage the existing demographic dividend. So in this context, what lies ahead? So what is the way forward in this context of India's demographic dividend? So there is no doubt that India can leverage existing demographic potential if India focuses on human resources development, gender equality, skill development, vocational training. by adopting a holistic approach. Now, holistic approach usually involves the measures that we have already discussed in earlier part of this lecture. So this holistic approach usually requires right population management and prioritizing investment in health, education, employment, and statistical systems. Okay, so India can navigate its demographic transition to emerge as a global leader. Okay, so by correctly leveraging the existing demographic dividend, so India can become a developed country. India can become a Viksit Bharat by the year 2047. Okay, so India can also achieve the inclusive and sustainable development with a strategic planning, effective implementation, as well as the international collaboration and cooperation as well. Okay, so this is all about the demographic dividend that India has. Okay, so if you really like our work, please like our video and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you have any suggestions, comments, please write those in the comment section. Thank you.